Hi everybody, Mary Rose here. Welcome back. And I want to get into how I break down my studio space, or really any space that I'm decluttering. If I haven't said it before in this whole series, I do love to organize. I'm a detail girl. I love it. I don't strive for perfection, to be honest. I strive for quality and functionality and usefulness, but I am a detail girl and like to get into. I have the ability to think about all the little details that can help things along the way. So, what I'm going to go through right now is the thinking time, the brainstorming time. And this is what helps me when I'm taking on a big project. You will see me standing in the doorway if I'm attacking a project like this, approaching a project like this. You will see me standing in the doorway or sitting in the seat, and it looks like I'm staring. What I'm really do is visualizing. I'm taking in my space. I'm thinking through different changes. I'm brainstorming. All of that thinking time and prep time. And for me, that's valuable. I think we don't put enough value into brainstorming these days. And it helps me think through different things in the studio. So, what I'm going through are the steps that I take when I'm thinking through a project. These aren't the actionable things. This is kind of the plan and the prep in there. So the first thing that I do is time versus task, and that's what I call it. You may say, well, I need to clean out this whole room. Just the whole room needs to be, gutted and redone. But I have a week in my schedule that I can dedicate to it. Well, those two things don't match unless you can really have people and help and everything there ready for you to go. You can't really gut a room and get it all back together in a week. At least I couldn't in there. So you have to be realistic with what you're trying to accomplish and the time you realistically have to accomplish it. Another example might be, okay, you have 2 weeks in your schedule where you can stop everything in your life. You have it off, you're ready and raring to go, and you're going to say, I'm going to do it in 2 weeks. The other question you have to ask is, can you physically work for 2 weeks straight, 18 hours a day to get this done? And that's an honest question you need to answer. For me, I jumped full in and I had to get it done, and it was hard. It was long days. It was putting furniture together. It was hard. I knew I could handle that, and I knew I had to get it done, and I was on a mission, so that worked for me, but it took a toll for sure. So you have to match and think about time versus task and make sure that they meet up, at least relatively close. So that's the first thing I think of. The next thing I think of is budget. And none of us have an unlimited budget, myself included. Because I knew that my studio really needed this, again, this is my full-time job, I gave myself a small budget because I knew I needed some furniture. About half the room I was able to repurpose. The other half, I had already been repurposing it for maybe 10, 14 years, however long it's been there, I don't really know. And it wasn't serving me anymore. So I knew that I needed to purchase new furniture for that. And this was all IKEA furniture, so that was helpful. That seems to work the best for me. I knew that I wanted white in there to not match, but I wanted bright. I wanted brightness in my studio. So when you're thinking about this, you want to think about what you're willing to put in budget-wise. And it also relates to your time and task. You may have a big budget, but a small window of time to get something done. So, what can you do? Maybe you invest in a big piece of furniture that's easy to move in, something like that. So all of this stuff works together in some form or another. So think about the budget, what you're willing to do. You might have to do a little research at some point about estimates for things that you want to invest in. You don't know what you want to invest in yet because we haven't thought about it. But budget is one of the things to go into. The next thing I think about is space and what my space needs to accomplish or what will be happening in that space. So for me, this is my art studio. This is my creative studio. This is my work studio. But that's the umbrella. In there, I tangle, I teach, I do bookbinding. I'm just getting into that. I do a little bit of mixed media. I'm trying to expand my knowledge. I have a library of reference books in there. I do a little bit of paper crafting in there. So I have all these different avenues in there. I teach, so I needed space for teaching. I needed space for business things like receipts and things like that. I have a little bit of shipping for my zippered bags or class kits, things like that. So this space had to accomplish a lot of things. And that leads into the next element is creating zones. So when I look at my studio and when I'm brainstorming how to rearrange it, I'm thinking of zones and I'm thinking about how I walk into that space and I'm going to use the space. And naturally from that, the zones are created. So for example, when you walk into my studio, there's a little teeny tiny corner right behind the door on the right. It's really not functional for anything. So that zone is my business zone. It's for paperwork and things like that I don't need to access all the time. It's really unfunctional space. It made perfect sense. Teaching zone. I have a tangling zone where I tangle and class prep and things like that. I have a library zone. These can be anything you want. Maybe you have part of your creativity is messy. So you maybe have a zone that is for the messy paint type things, and whatever surrounds that is for easy cleanup, or if you spill something, it doesn't hurt it. So I think about how I'm using the space regularly. That doesn't mean I come in and do something random, but in general, how I'm using the space. And then I create visually, you can write this down also, but for me, I visually create zones. And that helps me as I'm looking at all the stuff, where things are going to go. It helps me with that sort. And that leads into the next item I think about is what I call prime real estate. Just like in homes and offices and things like that, location, location, location. So anything that is easily accessible for whatever I'm doing in that space, I call prime real estate. So for example, the space where I create my classes, the area, the desk space where I brainstorm, create classes, tangle, all of that stuff. The prime real estate for me is directly in front of me on the desk. That is my easy access, all of that. Then maybe one thing to the right and one thing to the left. So prime real estate is I don't have to move my chair. It is within reach, right where I'm sitting. Well, what goes in that prime real estate? What am I doing in that space? For me, it's creating classes. So my pens are prime real estate. They get put right in front of me. My pens, my pencils, anything that I use to tangle regularly. My tangle pattern binder, my own binder, and maybe some books that I use to pull tangle patterns from or inspiration. Paper, regular paper, anything like that goes in the prime real estate space. So I make sure when I look at every zone, I think about what the prime real estate is. easily accessible. I don't have to get on my hands and knees to go get it, or up on a ladder. I'm short, so, up on a step stool. So I think about what is prime real estate in whatever space I'm doing, and the most used key items get put there and not anything else, so I don't have to go looking for things. Then there's a second tier. So my second level of prime real estate might be the shelf right above me where I sit and create classes. That might be where my colored pencils are, my Inktense pencils, any watercolor mediums, brushes, things like that I use, but I don't use 100% of the time. Still accessible, I can reach them from my seat. Anything where I have to get up or move is all secondary real estate to me. Whether it be down under my feet, I have cubbies under my desk. Things get put there. They're easily accessible, but I have to move my seat. So when I'm brainstorming this space, that's how I think about these areas. What's prime real estate, what's secondary, and then I rarely touch it, but it's up at the top and I can see it if I need it. Really, really, really helps me organize my space in a way that's usable and functional. And that's my goal. I want to be usable and functional every day. I can certainly come into a space and make it pretty and organized and pristine and all of that stuff. But if it doesn't work for me every day, it's a waste of time. So I'm thinking practically in my however I work for whatever the project is. Okay, and the last thing, and this is just something that, I found years and years ago, and I just love her as an organizer. Her name is Cass. I don't have her last name, actually, but she's Clutterbug. And my question is going to be, what bug are you? So here's what Cass has done. She has a website called clutterbug.me, and she has a quiz where you go in and you answer a bunch of questions, and she categorizes your organization style into 4 different bugs. And they are, you are either a ladybug, a cricket, a butterfly, or a bee. I fluctuate between the butterfly and the bee. So essentially, here's the example I'm going to give you. Let's say you are energetic, you go into your studio and you do all this great organization. You have a lot of stencils that you use in your art. And you say, I'm going to organize my stencils. And you get a beautiful box and you organize your stencils in there by category, squares, circles, whatever, and then they're alphabetized in sleeves in this beautiful box, and you put it up on the shelf and it looks beautiful and all of your stencils are great. The first day you go into your studio to use it, you go in and you can find your stencils super easily, and you pull out 6 or 7 that you want to play with for that project. And 2 days later, the project is done and you go to put things away and you have your 6 or 7 stencils that you pulled, and you're just like, well, I can't file it right now. I'll do it later. And you lay them on top of the box. 2 weeks later, you do another project. You go to your organized box, you pull out 5 or 6 more stencils, finish the project, don't feel like filing them, and you lay them on top of the box. After a few weeks of doing projects, that box is almost empty and all of the stencils are laying on top. And it looked really pretty. You put all that work into it, but that's not how you clean up. And that's a perfect example for me. When I clean up my studio, do not like to sit and file things from A, B, C, whatever, reds, blues, green. I just don't like sitting there and filing things really detailed. As detailed as I am, I don't like it. I like to have a basket, and when I clean up, I put it in the basket. So I have a lot of clear bins or baskets or whatever, and I can put things away very easily, but that's me. So what Cass has done in the Clutterbug system is she's categorized 4 different ways of how you like things to look and how you like things to clean up. And that helps you decide what system to create that you can maintain, because that's part of this whole thing. You can come in and do all this work, but if you can't maintain it in everyday life relatively easily, it's going to be a waste of time. It'll look good for a short period of time. It'll quickly get cluttered again, and then you're stuck back at square one. So I encourage you, after you watch all of my tips, go to Cass's website, look at her clutter bug, and just learn from her. She's a professional organizer. She will have a lot more tips than I have too. I'm focusing on a studio organization. She's general decluttering, organizing. For me, I learned from her system that I like my things out. You know, some people like behind closed doors. I do not. I do not mind if my shelves have everything visible, because I use them. I can sit and look and go, I haven't used that paper in ages. I don't need it behind closed doors. I want it easily accessible and easily clean upable, if that's a word. Okay, so whatever organization style you want, if you have other organizing websites or help that you like, figure that out. But really be honest with yourself about how you want it to look and how you like to clean up so that you can maintain it. And that's going to help you in the whole project. So all of this stuff is thinking time. This is way before you even start to do anything in your space. Sit back and think about this stuff and have an honest conversation with yourself about what's realistic in your lifestyle, what your room has to do, your time, your task, your budget, all of those things, and see if you can come up with a vision of how you want this to look that's realistic. Not just a magazine level vision, but a vision that's applicable to you. And then the next video, I'm going to talk about starting to do the grunt work and the actionable things that you're going to do based on your decisions in this video.